pick up one over rival Northwestern State tonight, Coach, and it was a nice, hard-fought win, to say the least.
Well, let's start with the very simple and the very obvious. It's very nice to win again. We've dropped 2 games at this place in the last 20 seconds by 2. And, if we'd win those games, our season, despite some adversity, would be very different. But it's not, and these are the cards we're dealt. We're trying to play this hand the best that we can. Second, I think the important point is it's nice to beat your in-state rival, Northwestern State. We'd had a pretty good streak over the last 3 or so years against them, and that streak ended. But now, we were able to at least hold serve and break even with them this year, and that's really good for us. I think they perhaps believed that we hadn't been playing maybe as confidently as we could, that maybe they'd make a big push at us in the second half. But we were able to sustain it. We got a little bit of a working margin, and yet we were kind of somehow able to hang on to it. We left 6 points on the floor there at the end of that second half that I thought was going to doom us again, but it did not. And we were able to fight through it and pull out a victory and actually make some free throws down the stretch, which has been a real bugaboo for us. But I thought we had some great individual performances tonight. Not even looking at the stat sheet, I was going to say that Roosevelt Johnson had a nice night, and Elgin Bailey fought back and had a much better second half. I think he was something like 4 for 7 or something like that in the second half, and got himself going. Elgin puts a lot of pressure on himself, and in his personality, he gets very anxious. And I thought in the second half he kind of let the game come to him a little bit, and slowly but surely we started working a little bit high-low, and we made some good decisions. But nice win tonight for us, and a pretty nice crowd with one of our signees and a recruit in the house. Very good stuff, and keeping ourselves alive in the Southland Conference.
Well, Coach, I think you take a look at this ball club is trying to find an identity, and one of the guys that go back to the very beginning of the season, Jeremy Campbell, has been in a starting role for most of the season, and he's as a sophomore, he's having to learn how to become a scorer, and it's something he struggled with at the beginning of the season. But it seems like over the last several ball games, he's finally starting to figure out what it means to take on that responsibility of contributing points, but also hitting some very key free throws at the end of this ball game to keep Northwestern State at bay.
Well, no question. Jeremy, this has been a great season for him. And, the qualifier in every statement like that, and it's too bad he's not playing along Brandon Fortenberry. In my own way, I feel bad for a guy like Elgin Bailey and Deshaun Patterson. In their senior years, there was, supposed to be a dimension and an opportunity to play in the postseason in our conference tournament and maybe beyond. We really have hit quite a roadblock without Brandon Fortenberry. But that said, it's been an opportunity for some guys as well. And I think you hit the nail right on the head in that our identity is starting to get formed. I worry that we're starting to figure this out just a wee bit too late. Just 3 weeks ago, I guess it was, maybe it was 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we lost a miserable game in a miserable fashion to Nicholls State, who at that time had not won a game and was looking kind of down and out. To their credit, they just beat Lamar today and won their 4th game in league play. So much for how teams look at the beginning of conference play. Kind of short-sighted in my part. It's a long race of 16 games, and even though you may stumble around to begin with, I think the Denver Broncos and teams like that should teach us a lesson. It's what you do down the stretch. And but we the fashion in which we lost and a chance to take control of the game at the free throw line around the basket, we didn't do it. We're about as low as we could be. And since that point in time, incrementally, we seem to be kind of carving out an identity. Like you said, Todd Nelson's minutes, he's starting to find a role. Jeremy Campbell, maybe a little bit of a Nochi-Ochi. Pop and Deshaun shuttling in and out as the point guards, and our big guys figuring out how to play together. And they've done a fairly admirable job. And, our patience is better. You look at the fact that we've played 2 teams now that are in the top of the rankings, by record. And, we've we've had good game plans. We've taken care of the ball for the most part. Tonight, only 11 turnovers. That's big for us. And 13 assists. That's really good for us, the way we've played and with some of the lack of ball handling. So, good for us today to compete against a team that's, had its way and done a pretty good well with 7-3 coming in here. And, we kind of shake up the race a little bit. And we're just trying to stay alive, and maybe something goofy happens and we get ourselves to Katy, Texas, and then anything's possible. So I'd love it for our seniors to get that chance, to get that opportunity. And I hope we just haven't started too late, Damon.
Well, the one that wasn't close in the last couple of weeks is where you head this Wednesday. You head to Lamar and a chance to face them. They dropped the game against Nicholls State, so I can't imagine that they're going to be in too good a mood heading into the Montaigne Center on Wednesday night.
Right. And they're very good at home. I mean, talk about an energized bunch and a lot of talent. We'll just look and see what our game plan was last time. Does it match up? Should we have played more zone? We've done a really good job. There's only 2 times we have not been able to go out with a good game plan that was successful. Even in a loss to Stephen F. Austin in our second conference game, the game plan was spot on. The defensive effort for most of the game was spot on. Even at McNeese, when we finally came out with a little bit more fight in the second half, we made it a decent ball game. But the 2 times it hasn't worked were UTA and Lamar. And I think part of it is there aren't very many weak links when you play them. Everybody's a threat. It stretches your defense. It makes gaps. And they're athletic enough and they score well enough that they're able to take advantage of that. This team from Northwestern State, we played zone and they got some looks tonight. But statistically, you're playing the odds because they haven't shot it great. They've shot it okay, but not great. And the zone worked for us tonight. You could do that against Lamar, and they may pour in 12 threes. I mean, they're just that potent. So, we did very well against UTSA, another good shooting team. But I don't know that their personnel is quite at the same level as Lamar. But we'll try to put together a good plan and go play, hopefully, a better, more respectable game because we know them a little bit now, and that certainly will bode well for us. At least we have some familiarity with what they are, and maybe that will get our attention, and we can, have a great focus for that game. And then we come back next Saturday, UT Martin and Bracket Buster Saturday, and believe it or not, I kind of see that as sometimes those games are really hard to get up for because you're like, why are we're in a conference race? But for us and our team, it might be something positive to kind of get a break from the same old game plan and